I am reminded of the deeply touching letters, cards, and messages which so many of you have sent my wife and myself.
It began with a statement few expected, but one that immediately reshaped the conversation around Britain's monarchy. At Windsor, during a moment that was meant to focus on routine updates, the palace confirmed two developments that reverberated far beyond its walls: the health struggles of King Charles III and the launch of a new project by the Prince and Princess of Wales, the Diana Initiative. End of GATT. This initiative, unveiled with Catherine's unmistakable composure, was not just another charitable announcement. It was framed as an institutional shift, a bridge between the monarchy's turbulent past and its uncertain present. By attaching Diana's name, still synonymous with compassion, honesty, and people-first values, William and Catherine placed themselves at the center of a generational transition. It was a move that resonated immediately with the public and the press, and one that, perhaps unintentionally, cast a long shadow over Queen Camilla. The timing could not have been more critical. Reports about the king's frailty had circulated for months, whispered in corridors of power, and hinted at by his increasingly limited appearances. The palace's confirmation was therefore more than medical news. It was political news. Every word, every hesitation, was read as part of a broader struggle over influence and legacy. And at the very heart of that struggle stood three distinct forces: Charles, weakened but still sovereign; William and Catherine, rising in prominence; and Camilla, absent from key events, her silence beginning to speak louder than her presence. Observers were quick to make comparisons. The late Queen Elizabeth II had steered the monarchy through crises by projecting steadiness, never allowing health concerns or private disputes to overwhelm the institution. Charles, by contrast, has faced his reign under relentless scrutiny, shaped by decades of personal controversies. His admission of vulnerability now sharpened questions about whether the crown itself can embody renewal, or whether it will be defined by the resilience of those waiting in the wings. It was Catherine who set the tone. Her words, carefully chosen but unmistakable, connected Diana's legacy with the monarchy's future. "This is about compassion as much as duty. It is about listening as much as leading," she said, echoing the qualities that once made Diana the most admired woman in the world. For millions watching, the symbolism was immediate. Catherine was not simply paying tribute to her late mother-in-law. She was repositioning the monarchy's narrative around empathy, continuity, and the idea of service that transcends titles. The response was swift. Within hours, social media platforms flooded with clips of Diana visiting hospitals, hugging children, confronting stigma juxtaposed with images of Catherine walking through school corridors or kneeling at community centers. Headlines spoke of a return to Diana's spirit, a new face of royal compassion, and even the silent eclipse of Camilla. For Queen Camilla, the absence at this moment was more damaging than any direct criticism. Her position, hard-earned after years of rehabilitation in the public eye, suddenly appeared precarious. She was not in Windsor when the announcement was made, nor did she feature prominently in the follow-up engagements. To her supporters, it may have been a wise step back to avoid being drawn into comparisons. To her critics, it was a sign that her influence was already waning. The optics mattered. Where William and Catherine appeared together, hand in hand with the memory of Diana, Camilla appeared separate, a queen without a stage. Commentators on both sides of the Atlantic noted the shift. The monarchy's future was being told not through Charles and Camilla, but through the Waleses. Inside Britain, this landed with particular force. Public opinion surveys had long suggested unease about Camilla's position as queen consort, even after official acceptance. By contrast, support for William and Catherine consistently cut across generations. The Diana Initiative crystallized that divide. One part of the monarchy tied to tradition and controversy, another tied to renewal and relatability. The broader political implications were hard to ignore. At a time when Republican sentiment has been slowly gaining ground, particularly among younger voters, the monarchy could ill afford to appear fractured or outdated. Catherine's intervention, packaged through the initiative, offered an antidote: the promise of relevance through sincerity, continuity through compassion. But it also sharpened the internal contrast within the family. Royal historians note that the British monarchy has always survived through selective adaptation. Elizabeth II modernized through television. Charles himself, decades earlier, was among the first royals to speak openly about environmentalism. Now it was Catherine stepping into that role, not by changing the institution's form but by changing its tone. And in doing so, she was also defining the balance of power. One senior commentator put it bluntly: this was not only a project launch, it was a succession rehearsal. For King Charles, frailty has forced difficult choices. For Camilla, absence risks irrelevance. And for William and Catherine, seizing Diana's legacy may have ensured that the monarchy's future is already taking shape, whether the present is ready for it or not. This first chapter of the unfolding story leaves the central question unresolved. Was this the monarchy's way of quietly managing transition, or the beginning of an outright redefinition of who truly leads? The days following the Windsor announcement revealed not only the fragility of the king's health, but also the fragility of the royal household's unity. What should have been a moment of collective reassurance rallying around Charles in a period of vulnerability instead highlighted competing visions for the monarchy's future. At the heart of this competition stood two couples, inevitably contrasted: Charles and Camilla, carrying the weight of history and compromise; William and Catherine, carrying the promise of renewal. The Diana initiative sharpened that contrast in a way no official statement could disguise. The press immediately sensed the significance. Major broadsheets framed it as a quiet transfer of authority, while tabloids spoke in bolder terms: Kate steps into Diana's shadow and shines. The initiative's framing was not political in the traditional sense, but it carried political weight. It was a statement about where the monarchy draws its credibility in the 21st century, not from ceremony alone, but from resonance with the public's values. Social media amplified this narrative. Clips of Catherine interacting with children, listening intently to families, or speaking softly about resilience circulated with hashtags like #DianaLegacy and #CatherineLeads. By contrast, Camilla's absence became a trending topic of its own. Users asked why the Queen was not present at such a moment, and speculation ranged from personal health to deliberate avoidance. Regardless of the truth, the effect was the same. Camilla looked sidelined at precisely the moment William and Catherine stepped forward. Meanwhile, Charles faced a cruel paradox. His reign, long anticipated, was being reshaped in real time by forces outside his control. Health concerns whispered for months, now effectively confirmed, weakened his authority not only physically but symbolically. Insiders describe a monarch increasingly caught between instinct and necessity. His instinct has always been to preserve family unity, to mediate rather than confront. But the necessity of reform, underscored by Catherine's Diana initiative, demanded clarity and resolve. It was not just about health, one advisor noted. It was about whether the king still set the rhythm of the monarchy or whether he was being carried along by it. The optics were unforgiving. Charles appeared pale during recent engagements, his voice quieter, his steps slower. In a monarchy where image equals authority, such visuals reinforced the perception of transition already underway. For Camilla, the dilemma was sharper still. After decades of carefully rebuilding her reputation from the scandal of the past to the legitimacy of a queen consort, she now faced a new kind of challenge: irrelevance. Her absence from Windsor, explained officially as personal scheduling, became a story of its own. Analysts pointed out that even if the decision was logistical, the symbolism was disastrous. When the monarchy needed unity, the Queen was invisible, one commentator wrote. More damaging was the comparison with Catherine, where Catherine appeared in hospital wards, schools, and charities, embodying Diana's legacy of public warmth. Camilla was nowhere to be seen. Where Catherine's image circulated widely, Camilla's faded from the front pages. For a queen, invisibility is rarely benign. Whispers inside palace corridors suggested Camilla was unsettled by the Diana initiative itself. To her, invoking Diana was not simply tribute, it was a recentering of the monarchy around a narrative that had always cast her in an unfavorable light. Though she avoided public comment, her discomfort was, in the eyes of insiders, palpable. Adding another layer of complexity was Princess Anne. Known for her stoic duty and plain-spoken independence, Anne reportedly expressed unease about Camilla's diminishing influence. To Anne, the monarchy was a system of duty, not sentiment, and sidelining a queen consort carried risks of its own. Observers noted that Anne's frustration at recent engagements was visible, her manner sharper, her tone more impatient. Anne does not seek power, but she resents disorder, one historian remarked. And right now, she sees disorder in how roles are shifting without clarity. Together, these dynamics created a picture of a family at a crossroads. Charles, weakened but still king, reluctant to confront. Camilla, sidelined and uneasy. Anne, restless at what she perceived as instability. And William and Catherine, increasingly shaping not only the narrative, but the practical direction of the monarchy. The Diana initiative, though framed as a charitable project, became a symbol of something much larger: the inevitability of generational transition. The public embraced it as a sign of relevance. The press embraced it as a sign of reform. And the palace, whether ready or not, was forced to confront it as a sign of power quietly shifting. For the monarchy as an institution, the stakes are high. Britain in the 2022 is not the Britain of the mid-20th century. Public patience for tradition without accountability is thinner. Calls for transparency grow louder, and younger generations increasingly question the monarchy's role at all. In this climate, Catherine's decision to embody Diana's legacy was not only strategic, but necessary. It answered the public's desire for sincerity and connection. Yet it also sharpened internal divisions, because the very values that strengthen Catherine's popularity, compassion, accessibility, moral clarity, highlight the weaknesses of Charles and Camilla's reign. This is the paradox that defines the moment. What strengthens the monarchy in public may destabilize it in private. What wins loyalty outside the palace may deepen fractures inside it. And so, the story of Windsor now moves forward with a central question. Can Charles and Camilla maintain relevance while William and Catherine redefine it? Or has the future already arrived, wrapped in the legacy of Diana, carried by a princess whose influence grows with every step she takes into the public eye? If the Windsor Council revealed a quiet shift, the days that followed turned it into a global narrative. Newspapers, broadcasters, and digital platforms seized on the symbolism of the Diana Initiative, presenting it not only as a charitable project, but as the clearest sign yet that the center of royal gravity was moving. In London, broadsheets framed the moment with solemn gravity. The Times described it as a generational repositioning, noting how Catherine's words echoed the late Princess Diana's ethos, while directly aligning with the concerns of modern Britain. The Guardian, less sympathetic to the monarchy, nonetheless acknowledged that the initiative was the most compelling attempt at relevance since the Platinum Jubilee. Tabloids, as ever, distilled the drama into stark contrasts. The Sun ran with "Kate takes the reins," while the Daily Mail chose "The Diana legacy returns." Both headlines paired radiant images of Catherine with grainier, less flattering shots of Camilla, reinforcing the impression of one woman rising while another receded. Television studios looped the same clip. Catherine, speaking of compassion as much as duty, William nodding beside her, and Charles looking on with evident strain. Analysts debated what the body language meant, whether Camilla's absence was deliberate, and what it might mean for the crown's future. Beyond Britain, the coverage was even more telling. In the United States, where Diana remains a cultural icon, networks highlighted the initiative as proof that William and Catherine were rewriting the royal script. Commentators on CNN and NBC emphasized the irony. The woman once vilified by the monarchy was now its most powerful symbol of renewal, wielded by her son and daughter-in-law. In Europe, the focus was on Charles's health. French and German outlets carried headlines about Le Roi Fragile and Der Schwache König, framing his reign as overshadowed before it had reached its second anniversary. The initiative, they argued, was less about honoring Diana and more about filling a leadership vacuum. In Commonwealth nations, where debates over republicanism simmer constantly, the story landed with a sharper edge. Australian and Canadian media framed the Diana Initiative as a new strategy for survival. Commentators noted that while Charles and Camilla had failed to capture younger audiences, William and Catherine, through sincerity and relatability, were rebuilding a sense of connection. Through all of this, Camilla remained silent. No statement, no appearance, no subtle message of reassurance. For a queen consort who had fought for decades to earn a measure of respect, silence became a double-edged sword. Supporters argued she was wise to avoid being dragged into direct comparison with Diana's memory, a battle she could never win. Critics countered that her absence signaled weakness, leaving Catherine to dominate the public stage unchallenged. Inside palace corridors, aides described Camilla as concerned but resigned. She understood the risks of appearing defensive, yet she also understood that invisibility was no solution. Her absence at key moments only made her presence feel more irrelevant. If the monarchy is being reshaped, one source close to her admitted, she is being reshaped out of it. For King Charles, the media storm was doubly painful. He had spent years cultivating an image of steady reform, from environmentalism to interfaith dialogue. Now, his health problems had made him the subject rather than the driver of headlines. Worse still, the very initiative launched in his name was interpreted as William and Catherine's project. While Charles formally announced the Diana Initiative, few doubted who had shaped its vision. Commentators pointed out the generational shift in tone. Charles's speeches often leaned toward abstract duty, Catherine's leaned toward lived compassion. The contrast was obvious, and it played poorly for the king. Advisors close to Charles insisted he was supportive of his son and daughter-in-law's role. But the optics told a different story. A monarch appearing frail, a consort absent, and an heir with his wife commanding the stage. Princess Anne, though less covered in the press, became a quiet focal point for insiders. Observers noticed her increasing visibility at official engagements, taking on roles Charles could not fulfill. Yet her guarded demeanor, sharper, less patient, hinted at unease with how quickly the narrative had shifted to William and Catherine. For Anne, whose reputation rests on decades of unflinching duty, the rise of the Diana legacy was complicated. She admired Diana's compassion but distrusted sentiment as a basis for institutional strength. Anne represents continuity without romance, one historian explained. She sees Catherine's rise not as dangerous, but as potentially destabilizing if it overshadows the king and queen. Polling soon confirmed what the media suggested. Surveys showed overwhelming support for the Diana initiative, with younger demographics particularly enthusiastic. More strikingly, favorability ratings for Camilla dipped, while Catherine's rose to new highs. Among royal watchers, the narrative was clear. The monarchy's future was not just in William's hands but in Catherine's image. She was now the anchor of credibility, the one figure who seemed to embody both tradition and change. This was, for many, the unspoken truth. Catherine had become the monarchy's most effective communicator, and in doing so, she had unintentionally, or perhaps inevitably, reduced both Charles and Camilla to secondary figures. The story, then, was no longer just about a king's health. It was about a family in transition, a consort fading from view, and a princess stepping into the role of the monarchy's moral compass. As one commentator summarized on the BBC, "This is not abdication, this is not crisis, but it is transition quiet, symbolic, and unmistakable." The Diana Initiative may have been launched as a program of compassion, but for Camilla it felt like a verdict. In the weeks that followed its announcement, her absence from major appearances became the subject of speculation. Officially, palace aides cited health treatments and a reduced schedule. Yet outside the palace gates, the interpretation was far more brutal. The Queen was being sidelined. When Charles appeared at St. George's Chapel for a Thanksgiving service, he was accompanied not by his consort but by his sister, Princess Anne. The photographs told the story without words. Charles, frail but dignified, walking arm in arm with the Princess Royal. Camilla, nowhere in sight. Within hours, broadcasters contrasted the image with Catherine's own radiant appearance days earlier at a children's hospice. Royal historians were quick to note that absence can sometimes be more damaging than misstep. A queen consort is expected to embody presence, one commentator observed. When the cameras turn and she is not there, speculation rushes to fill the silence. Often, into that silence stepped Anne. For decades, she has been the monarchy's workhorse, hundreds of engagements annually, delivered without fanfare or complaint. Now, with Charles limited and Camilla less visible, Anne's reliability became not just valuable but indispensable. Observers noted a subtle change in her tone. Once content to remain in the background, she now projected firmness in her remarks. At a veterans event in Portsmouth, she spoke pointedly about honor being more than titles, a line that, though not directed at anyone in particular, was widely interpreted as an endorsement of the values Catherine had championed. Anne's rivalry with Camilla has never been explosive, but it has been persistent. Rooted in decades-old personal history and sharpened by differences in temperament, their relationship has always been uneasy. Now, with the monarchy in transition, those tensions have resurfaced. Anne is seen as the embodiment of uncompromising duty. Camilla, the survivor who secured her crown through resilience and strategy. In the present climate, duty was winning. Perhaps the most striking development was the vocabulary creeping into public discourse. Commentators who once cautiously described Camilla as finding her footing now speculated about a post-Camilla monarchy. "I'm die." The phrase was not a prediction of abdication or removal. Instead, it captured the sense that her influence was already receding. Editorials in The Telegraph and The Spectator hinted that the monarchy's public face was now effectively William and Catherine's, with Anne as a stabilizing support. Camilla, by contrast, seemed increasingly peripheral. For Camilla herself, insiders describe a mix of hurt and resolve. She was said to be frustrated by coverage portraying her as invisible, insisting privately that she remained committed to her duties. Yet she also understood the power of perception. Once the public decides you are fading, one aide admitted, it is almost impossible to reverse. The palace is acutely aware that this dynamic is not merely personal but institutional. The monarchy cannot afford open rivalries, nor can it survive on symbolism alone. With Charles's health under question, the balance between visibility, stability, and generational change has become more delicate than ever. In this context, Camilla's reduced presence, intentional or otherwise, creates a vacuum that others are filling. Catherine, with her poised public image, and Anne, with her relentless duty, have both emerged stronger. For Charles, it means watching his carefully balanced vision of a slimmed-down monarchy evolve into something he did not fully script. A monarchy where his wife fades, his sister steadies, and his son and daughter-in-law shine. What began as a compassionate initiative in Diana's name has become a mirror reflecting deeper truths. The monarchy is shifting, quietly but unmistakably, and Camilla's struggle to remain central has become part of the story itself. If Camilla's absence created uncertainty, William and Catherine's presence delivered clarity. In the weeks after the launch of the Diana Initiative, the couple's public calendar became the most closely watched element of royal life. Crowds turned out not only for ceremony, but for a sense of direction, a reassurance that the monarchy could both honor tradition and respond to modern needs. The Diana Initiative itself quickly moved from symbolism to substance. New partnerships with mental health charities, early years education groups, and international relief organizations gave the project immediate visibility. The choice to attach Diana's name proved decisive. For the public, it was more than an initiative. It was an act of remembrance, a continuation of a legacy cut short. For William and Catherine, it was a bridge, linking past compassion to future relevance. The rollout was carefully orchestrated. Catherine visited schools in Leeds, speaking with teachers about classroom mental health resources. William met youth workers in Birmingham to discuss the challenges of digital addiction. Each appearance was designed not just as a photo opportunity, but as a working session, producing policy notes that were later circulated to government departments. What stood out most was how quickly media framing shifted. Stories about Charles's frailty or Camilla's vulnerability now competed with images of Catherine crouched beside a hospital bed, or William delivering quietly forceful speeches about resilience. The monarchy's narrative had tilted. Instead of being defined by speculation about decline, it was energized by stories of purpose. Even newspapers traditionally skeptical of the monarchy began running editorials noting the couple's effectiveness. The Guardian called the Diana Initiative the first credible attempt in years to connect the crown to public service beyond ceremony. Meanwhile, the Times described William and Catherine as leaders in all but title. Behind palace walls, this shift was not accidental. Sources close to Kensington Palace revealed that the couple's team had been quietly expanding its advisory networks, bringing in former government policy advisors, media strategists, and international charity directors. What once resembled a support staff now looked like a miniature policy unit. This development has not gone unnoticed at Buckingham Palace. Charles's aides, wary of any impression that the heir is eclipsing the sovereign, privately emphasize that the king remains fully engaged. Yet even they admit the gravitational pull of William and Catherine's popularity is hard to resist. The institution is moving where the energy is, one senior courtier confessed. And right now, the energy is theirs. The consolidation of William and Catherine's role is not merely a function of visibility. It reflects a generational redefinition of leadership. While Charles and Camilla emphasize continuity, William and Catherine embody accessibility. Their strength lies not in grand gestures, but in the accumulation of small, credible acts. Listening to a nurse, walking through a food bank, sitting cross-legged with children. For younger Britons, this is the kind of monarchy that resonates. Polling in late 2025 revealed that approval ratings for William and Catherine had climbed to their highest since their 2011 wedding, with support strongest among those aged 18 to 35, precisely the demographic most skeptical about monarchy's future. Still, consolidation comes with risk. William and Catherine's rising profile inevitably casts shadows elsewhere, particularly over Charles and Camilla. Analysts caution that while the public may embrace this shift, the monarchy remains a family as well as an institution. Balancing loyalty, legacy, and leadership will test every relationship within its walls. Yet for now, one fact is unavoidable. William and Catherine have become the monarchy's undisputed center of gravity. Their actions are no longer framed as preparations for a future reign. They are shaping the monarchy in the present tense, steadily, strategically, and with a clarity that others, by choice or circumstance, cannot match.